Imagine you've been wandering in the scorching heat of the ancient Near East,
Oh, man.
right? You are just physically exhausted, practically delirious from hunger, and suddenly you smell something cooking over an open fire.
Like a thick, savory stew or something.
Exactly, a thick red lentil stew. And you are so desperate, like so thoroughly depleted, that you would trade literally anything for a bowl of it, even your entire family inheritance.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. But what if the most powerful, medically validated healing meals on the planet weren't designed in some modern nutrition lab or plated in a Michelin star kitchen, you know? What if they were eaten by people in exactly that survival scenario thousands of years ago?
It's a super wild thought to entertain. Because, I mean, we have this really deep-seated modern bias, right?
Yeah.
We just assume that advanced nutrition requires microscopes and mass spectrometers and, sterile laboratories.
Yeah, we think they were just eating dirt.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We assume that before modern chemistry, people were just randomly eating whatever grew in the ground and just hoping for the best.
Well, we are going to completely challenge that assumption today. Welcome to a deep dive on a truly fascinating piece of source material. We're looking at a really detailed breakdown from the YouTube channel called Homestead Roots.
Yeah, and it's a great breakdown.
It really is. It explores 20 biblical meals that actually function as complete, like, medically validated healing systems. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how ancient populations managed to construct meals that perfectly align with modern nutritional biochemistry.
And they did this armed with nothing but centuries of unbroken feedback from their own bodies.
Just trial and error.
Exactly. And just to set the stage for you listening, whether you view these ancient texts as, religious scripture or purely just as historical documents, the nutritional science hidden inside these meals is undeniable.
Right, it's just science.
Right. We are treating these texts today as an ancient, hyper-accurate dietary log because the specific food combinations described in these stories, they're highly applicable to the biology of how you digest and heal today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to start with the scenario I mentioned right at the top. It's maybe the most famous food story in human history, right? From Genesis 25.
Oh, yeah. Esau and the lentil stew.
Yeah. Esau comes in from the field, he's starving, and he trades his entire birthright to his brother Jacob for just a bowl of red lentil stew. And historically, Esau gets painted as a fool.
Sure he does.
I mean, we've all been hangry, but trading your inheritance for soup, it sounds like the ancient equivalent of like a crypto bro trading millions for a digital picture of an ape, you know? It just seems like a terrible, rash decision.
It does. It totally seems like the ultimate bad deal on the surface.
Yeah.
But when you actually break down the biochemistry of what was inside that specific bowl, the whole narrative just completely shifts.
Really? How so?
Well, lentils in the ancient world, they weren't just cheap peasant food. They were actual survival currency. They're incredibly dense, calorie-rich, and crucially shelf-stable for years. Just one single cooked cup of lentils delivers like 18 grams of plant-based protein, plus a massive hit of iron, folate, zinc, and magnesium.
But come on, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still just a bowl of soup, right? Was Esau really making some calculated biological choice? Or was he just an exhausted guy who needed whatever calories were in front of him?
Well, he was definitely exhausted. But what he was smelling wasn't just calories. It was a highly engineered recovery mechanism. And what's fascinating here is the preparation. The source material points out that the ancients didn't just toss dry lentils into boiling water.
Right, they soaked them first.
Exactly, they soaked them overnight. And modern science tells us that soaking breaks down phytic acid. Now, phytic acid is the compound that acts like a molecular handcuff.
Molecular handcuffs, that sounds intense.
It kind of is. It binds to all those essential minerals, like the zinc and iron. Meaning if you don't soak the lentils, your body simply passes the minerals through without absorbing them. Breaking those handcuffs was step one.
So they were unlocking the nutrients before it even hit the fire.
Before it even started cooking. Yes. Then they slow cooked those lentils with cumin and coriander. And they didn't do this just for the flavor profile either.
Wait, really? The spices actually do something biologically?
Oh, absolutely. Cumin actively stimulates the production of digestive enzymes in your pancreas, and coriander physically reduces intestinal spasms.
Wow.
Right, so this makes processing that incredibly dense hit of fiber much, much easier on the gut. And then finally, they finish the stew with a heavy pour of olive oil.
Olive oil makes everything better.
It does, but biologically, it acts as a chemical transporter here. It makes all the fat-soluble nutrients in the bowl entirely bioavailable.
Okay, so without even knowing what an enzyme was or having a word for bioavailability, they basically created a flawless digestion and recovery protocol.
Exactly. It's brilliant.
It really is. And we see this exact same intuitive brilliance in another famous story, Jesus feeding the 5,000 in the book of John. Now, the text specifically mentions barley loaves, not wheat.
Which is such a crucial detail that often gets overlooked. Barley was the grain of laborers, right? Fishermen, the working class.
Right, the cheap stuff.
But biologically speaking, barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan of any grain on Earth.
Okay, beta-glucan. I've definitely heard of that in the context of, like, expensive heart health supplements. But what exactly is it doing in a piece of ancient bread?
Well, beta-glucan is a really unique type of soluble fiber. When you chew and swallow it, it literally forms a viscous gel, almost like a microscopic sponge right inside your digestive tract.
Wait, a gel sponge in your stomach?
Yeah, and that gel slows down the rate at which your body absorbs glucose, meaning your blood sugar remains perfectly stable instead of just spiking and crashing.
Oh, that's huge for sustained energy.
Huge. And furthermore, it physically binds to cholesterol in your gut and just pulls it right out of your body. It is so effective at this that the FDA currently allows food manufacturers to put a verified heart health claim on products that contain it.
That is wild. And they paired that barley bread with olive oil. I was actually looking through the source notes on this, and this part blew my mind. When you combine the beta-glucan from the barley with extra virgin olive oil, you introduce a polyphenol called oleocanthal.
Yes, oleocanthal.
Right. And oleocanthal functions almost identically to the active ingredient in ibuprofen in the human body.
It's exactly right. It chemically inhibits the very same inflammatory enzymes, specifically the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes, that modern painkillers actually target.
Wait, so you're telling me that simply dipping this specific ancient bread into olive oil is basically the biological equivalent of popping an Advil?
I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And remember, this was their daily bread. This wasn't some rare, expensive medical treatment reserved for kings.
It was just Tuesday lunch for fishermen.
Exactly. They were consuming a cardiovascular and anti-inflammatory health protocol every single day. The results weren't published in some medical journal. They were simply written in how well these people lived, worked, and survived in a really brutal environment.
Okay, that makes total sense for basic daily survival and energy. But that raises a massive question for me. Survival isn't just about getting enough calories or, managing joint pain.
Yeah.
What happens when they drank water teeming with ancient, unfamiliar bacteria? Like, how did their immune systems not just completely collapse without modern sanitation or water filtration or antibiotics?
That is the perfect question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the absolute foundation of all ancient health, the gut microbiome.
Right.
The ancient texts didn't just stumble into gut health. They literally built their entire societal baseline around it. You constantly see references to the Promised Land being a land flowing with milk and honey.
Right, but the milk and honey you buy at the grocery store today, in those plastic bottles, those are basically entirely different substances than what they were consuming, aren't they?
Oh, completely different universe.
Yeah.
When the ancient texts talk about milk, they aren't talking about pasteurized, homogenized, vitamin D fortified cow's milk.
Right.
They were talking about goat's milk. And the biochemistry here is vital. Goat milk contains A2 casein rather than the A1 casein that's found in most commercial cow dairy today.
Okay, break that down for me. What is the mechanical difference between A1 and A2 inside the body?
It comes down to how your digestive enzymes actually break the protein apart. So A1 casein breaks down into a peptide that acts as an inflammatory trigger in the human gut. It often causes bloating, immune distress, things like that.
Which so many people struggle with today.
Exactly. But A2 casein, however, is recognized seamlessly by human enzymes. It digests completely cleanly without triggering that inflammatory cascade at all.
And they weren't just drinking it straight from the goat either. They were fermenting it in goat skin bags into yogurt.
Yes, which is key. Fermentation transforms that easily digestible milk into a living, dynamic food. It packs the milk with dense strains of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium.
The good stuff.
Right. And these aren't just passive ingredients. These bacteria actively colonize your intestinal tract. They train your immune cells on how to respond to threats. And they produce short-chain fatty acids that literally seal up the tight junctions in your gut lining.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which prevents pathogens from leaking right into your bloodstream.
Which is so funny to think about. Like, we walk into a modern health food store and pay $40 for a tiny glass bottle of these exact probiotics, and they were just producing them natively in
It's
tents.
hanging out in tents.
Right. And then they paired it with honey. Now, I love the analogy here because the modern plastic bear full of grocery store honey is essentially dead syrup. It's been boiled, heavily filtered, stripped of all its natural power. But ancient, raw, unheated honey, that was a living, clinical-grade pharmacy.
Absolutely. True raw honey contains active enzymes and a highly specialized protein called defensin 1. It also contains compounds that literally release a slow, sustained drip of hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide. Wait, like the stuff we pour on scraped knees?
The exact stuff.
How does that even work inside the gut?
Exactly like it works on a scrape.
Yeah.
When it hits your digestive tract, that defensin 1 and hydrogen peroxide go to work physically dissolving the cell walls of pathogenic bacteria. It just bursts them open.
Oh, God.
It is a clinical-grade antimicrobial sweep. So when you combine that raw honey with the probiotic-rich fermented goat's milk, you are deploying a complete tactical gut health protocol. The honey sweeps away the harmful bacteria, and the probiotics from the yogurt immediately colonize the newly cleared real estate.
Which perfectly sets up this super bizarre story from the book of Numbers. The Israelites are wandering in the barren desert, right? And they are literally weeping, mourning the loss of cucumbers.
Yeah, crying over cucumbers.
Which sounds utterly ridiculous to us today until you look at the biology. Cucumbers are 96% water. In a desert, this wasn't just a vegetable, it was essential, life-saving hydration.
Definitely.
But the text notes they mix these cucumbers with yogurt and fresh mint.
And this raises an important question. Why mint? It wasn't just some culinary garnish to make it look pretty. Mint is a highly medicinal herb. The active compounds in mint physically interact with cold-sensitive receptors located in the mucosal lining of your mouth and your stomach.
Wait, so it literally tricks your nervous system?
Yes, it tricks your brain into feeling a cooling sensation, which triggers a physiological cascade of relaxation responses throughout the entire digestive system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it shifts the body into a parasympathetic state, what we often call rest and digest. So you have the cellular hydration from the cucumber, the live probiotics from the yogurt training the immune system, and the mint actively reducing intestinal spasms and heat stress.
It's an entire system.
It really is. It is a restorative cooling mechanism perfectly calibrated for the harsh reality of the wilderness.
It just really makes you marvel at how they viewed food. But if the gut is the fortress wall keeping the invaders out, what were they doing to protect the king inside?
Ooh, good analogy.
Thanks. I mean, how did they protect their cellular structure and their brains from aging and disease? Because this brings us to a category of foods in the source material that were so incredibly potent, they were actually elevated to sacred status, like physically carved into their architecture.
Right, like if you look at the pomegranate,
Yeah.
King Solomon built this magnificent, unparalleled temple, and he chose to have 200 pomegranates prominently carved into the main pillars.
And on the high priest's robes, too.
Exactly. Why elevate this specific, somewhat tedious-to-eat fruit to such a sacred level? Well, modern antioxidant science finally has the answer.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I was reading this. It comes down to a specific compound called punicolagen, right? Can you unpack what that actually does in the body?
Gladly. So punicolagen is a massive antioxidant molecule found almost nowhere else in nature except the pomegranate. And it's so large that your body actually can't absorb it directly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but remember those healthy gut bacteria we were just talking about?
From the yogurt?
Yes. When you eat a pomegranate, those bacteria act as tiny chemical factories. They break that massive punicolagen molecule down into smaller, highly bioavailable compounds called urolithins.
Okay, urolithins. And what do they do once they get into the bloodstream?
They are profound scavengers. They basically sweep through your blood, clearing out cellular debris. They protect your arterial health, actively lower blood pressure, and significantly reduce systemic inflammatory markers.
That's incredible.
Right. The ancient Israelites built their most sacred temples around the imagery of this fruit because over generations, they literally watched it keep their elders sharp and their hearts strong.
And we see a really similar cellular protection in the classic pairing of grapes and goat cheese, right? Because grapes contain resveratrol, which is a polyphenol concentrated in the skin and seeds. And resveratrol activates something called sirtuins in the body.
Which is a critical mechanism. Sirtuins are a family of proteins that act like a nighttime cleaning crew for your cells.
Cleaning crew.
Yeah, they're directly linked to DNA repair, metabolic regulation, and extreme longevity.
But the magic is really in the pairing, isn't it? When you pair those fresh grapes with the probiotic-rich goat cheese, something incredible happens. Modern immunologists are actively studying this exact combination right now because the resveratrol, combined with live beneficial bacteria, creates a unique biological synergy. It dramatically boosts the systemic immune response.
That's all about that synergy.
But here's my hang-up with all this. I understand the biology now, the science makes sense. But let's talk about the roasted eggplant with raw garlic.
Oh, a classic combination.
Right. So eggplant skin contains an antioxidant called niacin, which acts as a shield, specifically protecting the delicate lipids in your brain cell membranes from oxidative damage.
Yep.
So eggplant is essentially ancient brain food. But the trick to this dish is the garlic. The ancients would roast the eggplant over a fire until it was soft, mash it up, and then crucially crush raw garlic over the top just before eating. My question for you is, how on earth did ancient people figure out this specific sequencing without mass spectrometers? Like, weren't they just throwing stuff in a pot to make it taste good? How did they know to preserve the garlic in its raw state?
Well, what's fascinating here is the volatile chemistry of garlic itself. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, which is a massive broad-spectrum antimicrobial. It fights bacteria, viruses, even fungi.
Nature's antibiotic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But allicin is incredibly unstable.
Yeah.
It is created the exact moment you physically crush the garlic clove, but it degrades almost instantly under high heat. If you throw the garlic in the fire with the eggplant, you completely destroy the medicine.
Wow.
So they intentionally crushed it raw over the warm eggplant.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about how they knew, they didn't need to know the molecular weight of allicin. They had centuries of unbroken observational feedback from their own bodies.
The ultimate clinical trial.
Right. Think about it. When a mother cooked the garlic into the stew, maybe her family's colds lasted 2 weeks. But when she added it raw at the end, they recovered in 3 days. Over hundreds of years and thousands of meals, the optimal, scientifically perfect method simply survived, and it became sacred tradition.
That is just incredible to think about. The tradition is literally just the scientific method played out in real time over millennia.
Yes.
So, okay, we've looked at their daily survival food, their gut protectors, and their cellular repair mechanisms. But what happened when they stopped to feast? Did they just, like, pile a bunch of roasted meat on a table and call it a day?
Not at all.
Because the source material outlines these commanded nutritional matrices that modern science, frankly, considers near perfect.
Yeah, let's look at the roasted lamb served with dates. Lamb is arguably the most ceremonially significant animal in these texts. But functionally, biologically, it is exceptionally rich in B12 and highly bioavailable heme iron.
Heme iron.
Right. Heme iron is absorbed at rates 3 times higher than the iron you get from plants. This meal was essentially a rapid repletion protocol. If you were fatigued, anemic, or recovering from a severe illness or childbirth, this rebuilt your red blood cells.
Wait, but why serve it studded with dates? Is that just, a sweet garnish to cut the richness of the meat?
Not at all. The source points out that the fruit acids in the dates act as a chemical escort. Human intestines are an alkaline environment, which normally makes iron clump up and become difficult to absorb.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But the fruit acids from the dates bind to the lamb's iron, keeping it soluble and literally walking it right through the gut lining into the bloodstream.
Wow.
The combination makes the meal significantly more nutritious than if you just ate a massive plate of lamb or a handful of dates on their own. It's a complete symbiotic system.
So what does this all mean when we scale it up? Which brings us to the 20th and final meal in the source material. The ultimate matrix.
The big one.
Yeah. In Deuteronomy 8.8, there is a list of exactly 7 foods that the Promised Land will provide. Not 10, not 50, exactly 7. Wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. For centuries, this was just read as a poetic, metaphorical symbol of agricultural wealth.
But when modern biochemists actually analyze these exact 7 foods together in a single bowl, it forms a flawless nutritional matrix. There are virtually no nutritional gaps.
It sounds like the ancient equivalent of one of those modern biohacker meal replacement shakes, like Soylent or something, engineered in a lab to hit every single macro and micro requirement. How do these seven foods actually interlock?
It is stunningly precise. First, the grains, the wheat, and the barley provide complex carbohydrates, but they are incomplete proteins. They lack certain essential amino acids.
Okay.
However, the unique amino acid profiles of the figs and dates perfectly fill those exact gaps, combining to form complete muscle-building proteins.
And what about the vitamins?
This is where the olives come in. The olives provide dense monounsaturated fats and that powerful anti-inflammatory oleocanthal we talked about. But crucially, those fats act as a fleet of delivery trucks.
Delivery trucks.
Yeah. They bind to the water-soluble vitamins from the grapes, figs, and pomegranates, ensuring your body actually absorbs them rather than just flushing them out.
Ah, that makes sense.
And finally, you get a massive hit of rapid energy from the natural sugars in the dates. But it is perfectly buffered by the beta-glucan sponge from the barley, ensuring your blood sugar remains entirely stable. It is synergistically, biologically perfect.
It's a complete survival, longevity, and performance protocol that modern cardiologists and oncologists are just now confirming with massive budget clinical trials.
Exactly.
And as we pull all of this together for you listening, I mean, the overarching takeaway from this source material is that these ancient populations were not primitive. We carry this arrogant bias that older automatically means less sophisticated.
We really do.
But they were profoundly attentive. They built an entire food culture based on exactly what healed them and sustained them over thousands of years of trial and error.
They paid absolute strict attention to cause and effect within their own biology. But we also have to add a critical caveat here for anyone listening who wants to go out and apply this. Quality matters immensely today.
Oh yeah, huge point.
The modern, watered-down supermarket versions of these foods simply do not offer these clinical benefits.
Yeah, let's be crystal clear about that. You can't just go buy a plastic bear of heavily processed syrup, a carton of inflammatory A1 cow's milk, and a plastic bottle of olive oil that's been secretly cut with cheap seed oils and expect to cure your joint pain, you know?
Right, it doesn't work that way.
You have to seek out the real heirloom version.
Exactly. You need cold-pressed, unfiltered, single-origin olive oil.
Mhm.
You need true, raw, unheated honey, unprocessed ancient grains. If you want the clinical results of the ancients, you need the clinical-grade ingredients the ancients actually had access to.
Makes total sense.
It requires a bit more effort and intention to source, but you are fundamentally upgrading the biochemical instructions you are giving your cellular machinery every single time you sit down to eat.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought to wrap up today's deep dive. This source material proves that ancient populations mapped out perfect, life-saving nutritional matrices simply by paying incredibly close, unbroken attention to how their bodies felt over centuries.
They listen to the feedback.
They listened. So, I mean, my question for you listening right now is, what biological signals is your own body actually sending you right now about your modern diet? Are you feeling perpetually sluggish? Or chronically inflamed?
Constantly dealing with a foggy brain.
Right. What vital signals might you be completely ignoring right now simply because you are waiting for a randomized clinical trial to tell you what you should be eating instead of, listening to the undeniable truth of your own biology?
It's a good question.
It's definitely something to think about the next time you sit down to a meal.